to Seller Sessions, our first session of the year, doing a life after exit. This time I bring in Richard Turnbull. I've known Richard roughly since 2015-16, I do believe. He had an exit last year. And today we're going to be talking about that. People now know the format. We've done a dozen of these so far, including Matt and Kata Phipps. Who else did we do? We've done Michelle Venton. There's a series of other people. But again, from the UK, which is really good to see more people from the UK having exits. Today, Richard is joining us first time. Rich, do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself, please?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Danny. So I've been selling on Amazon probably about 8 years. I was focused on the health market, and essentially the majority of my sales were in the UK and Europe, although I was selling in the US right at the beginning. Actually, I never saw myself as an Amazon seller at the beginning. I saw myself as trying to build a brand and try to do things on Shopify for a while. But ultimately, as we all know, on the 80-20 principle, most of the sales came from Amazon. And loved it. Exited September last year and had a hell of a journey. Yeah.
Cool. Let's go into that journey. Let's unpack it. So September you sold to an aggregator. We won't name the name unless you want to name. They are one of them based in Europe. There's 100 aggregators, so there's a lot in Europe too. But when did that start for you in terms of, right, I think I'm going to sell and I'm going with this aggregator or I'm going with this person?
Yeah, well, it's a good question because I was very lucky. I had some investors, and one of the investors was an M&A guy, mergers and acquisitions expert. And from the point I raised investment, which was 5 years ago, the whole point was to get on board some great advisors. I was fortunate enough that, as with some Amazon businesses, my cash flow was quite good at that time, at least. And I didn't actually need to raise investment. That's quite a nice position to be in. To raise investment, you don't need it. It meant I could pick and choose the people who invested. And this guy was a mentor for me and was fantastic. And what he was able to do is help prepare us. So the idea of taking on investment meant I was always going to exit at some point to give a return for my investors and also to cash out for myself.
Yeah.
And the intention wasn't to sell last year. We were actually going to sell towards the end of this year because we could see the trajectory of where we were going. And the intention was never to do an aggregator. It was, as I said earlier, it was try to build a brand, and hopefully it was the brand that you'd get the higher multiples on, and people love the brand as opposed to the business.
But the multiples are high anyway. And your mergers guy probably said, look, we're in a bubble or to that effect. Why not sell now rather than wait? Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. So I kept getting inundated by aggregators' emails, and I was ignoring most of them because it wasn't necessarily my best 12 months. And since I've sold, I've been inundated by other Amazon sellers about questions, and it's the same questions that keep coming up. And why did you sell then was one of the questions. And it wasn't the best 12 months for me. As I said, my sales were predominantly European, and Brexit hit me hard. So I lost a third of my sales in January, February last year. And so I had no intention of even replying to the aggregators. The reason I started taking calls is I hit a few milestones in the business, and it was nice milestones, but scary milestones. Like one of my products in the UK hit 20,000 reviews, and in the UK that's a big amount of reviews.
Yeah.
In the US, you get a lot of products like that, but I was just getting inundated with aggregators and not just aggregators, but all sorts of buyers. And I thought, right, I'll take a few of these calls and spoke for an M&A guy, and he said, if you're being inundated that much, let's hear what they have to say. And to be honest, a few of them were just an absolute waste of time.
Yeah,
it was again great having him on the call because he was actually quite good at shutting down the calls quite quickly that were a waste of time. And I've learned a lot in hindsight that seems quite obvious now. But there's, like you said, there's over 100. I mean, 100, 150, depending how you define them. And there's certainly a big gap between the ones that I think are going to survive in a couple of years from now, and certainly the ones that
there's the good at money raising but no operational skills, and good at money raising with good operational skills. It's a clear distinction in a 10-minute call you can have with an aggregator, whether they're clueless or not.
Absolutely. And what I found fascinating, and again, this is hindsight, having never been through it before, having someone who has been through it, and I've since spoken to a few friends of mine who have sold as well, and they had exactly the same experience. It's, you can get these fantastic multiples offered to you and these fantastic valuations of all this money you've had tied up in your business, that you can know on paper what your business is worth. But when you're actually seeing a number that would go into your pocket, it's quite, it's a different way of thinking about it. But what I found a real distinction is the ones that had access to the funds now and the ones that were making an offer and then never following through. So that happened in particular to a friend of mine. He was offered a fantastic multiple, and they went, right, okay, they signed a letter of intent, everything went well, did the due diligence, and they went, right, okay, give us a couple of months because we're just finalizing this round of funding. And that's typical. I think a lot of the aggregators.
That's naughty, because what they're doing is they're locking you down, they're taking you off the table. That's the thing. And I say this to all sellers: if someone rushes you in to discovery quickly and locks you down, offers you a deal really fast, expect to get a lowballed offer, because they'll go, in discovery, this is what we found. And there are going to be genuine cases of that, right? There will be genuine cases of there is a good reason, but a lot of times is to get the seller off the market because they know that someone else is going to step in. And this is where some of them can get the advantage. Whereas someone like a Thrasio will do their due diligence. It might take 3 days to a week to really build that out before they can offer something. I'm just giving them as an example, versus someone else who goes, we love what you do. 48 hours later, here's a letter of intent or under offer. They go in that discovery, and like you said, they're either raising additional funds, they're getting to your deal, but they haven't got to it yet. And that's just naughty. That's like bad business practices.
It is. And you've hit the nail on the head. Exactly. My understanding, at least from the outside, that's what's happening. And it's hard to know from the outside because you don't know the inner workings of what's driving their decision making. And actually what happened with my one.
Well, there's scarcity. If someone needs to do that, they're not standing behind their product as a strong business as a product. And it's the scarcity mindset because they're worried about everyone else. If you're that good and you've got good operational chops and stuff, you're not going to win everything because people are going to offer silly money. But if you have to implement business practices like that to take sellers off the market, as basically putting a handcuff deal on them over a period of time, then you shouldn't be in this business.
Absolutely. And in that example of my friend, it was very hard because he basically had got to the point where he felt that he'd virtually sold his business, just waiting for the money to come in, and he was waiting, and it actually took another 6 months. And before he said, look, this is just not happening. And the opposite with me, in that we were waiting for a certain approval to come through. So we did our due diligence, and I sold to one of the bigger aggregators. You're quite right. I can't say who it is because of an NDA at the moment. I'm still in that very early stage of selling. But ultimately, mine was delayed by 3 weeks whilst they were waiting for a certain payment to come through, which again, I think more I speak to people isn't unusual. That wasn't a delaying tactic. That was a genuine example of where the economy at the moment, it was
my thing, which wasn't genuine. My thing isn't genuine. If someone rushes you in within, say, 48 hours or so, very quickly to take you off the market and lowballs you and says they've discovered something, that's a bad tactic. The other bad tactic is to do that, to say you're going to have to hold on because we're raising money. You should have the money before you put someone under LOR. True? Yes, so they're both bad practices. And like you said, there are genuine things where there is a delay in some sort of level of payment that has to be adhered to,
Absolutely. So, I mean, in hindsight, my deal went through very quickly. So from the point of, going back to your original question of how many, how did it come together? I actually, in the end, spoke to 16 different aggregators. I spoke to 2 different brokers on top of that. And from the point we got narrowed down, ultimately, a lot of them said no to us. And a lot of them said no to us for genuine reasons. So, we didn't have sell. As I said previously, we started off selling in America, but by the point of selling, I was only selling in Europe. So a lot of them said no just because they wanted a big US presence. Yeah. Actually, in the end, the one that bought me, that was the reason that one of the reasons they loved us, because we didn't have US presence. We had a proven business model in Europe. They saw that as an opportunity to grow in America on our behalf. Exactly. Yeah. So you always want to leave a bit of opportunity for growth. And that was one of the reasons they love us. So I think a lot of it is different aggregators. Not all aggregators will like you for the same reasons. And the reasons that some of those said no to us were the reasons that some of them really loved us. And also, I think certainly from my point of view, it happened very quickly from the point of the 3 or 4 that we kind of narrowed it down to, with them narrowing it down, us narrowing it down. From that point, it happened very quickly in hindsight. But at the time, it felt like every day felt like a week. You know, from the point of letter of intent and signing that with the people that bought us, I think it was 70 days to actually have the money in my account.
Yeah, and that's not bad. 70 days to have it from beginning to end. That's pretty good. Yeah, I think the reason it's getting longer now, because people used to say 45, and I think more so it's got longer because people had to be realised is that there has to be more due diligence up front before they can promise anything on that level. So when they first come to the market and there was 5 to 10 aggregators, it was a lot easier to do because there's more deal flow. But as we had the COVID bump and the adjustments and everything else, people realizing where they're getting burnt on brands, where they've overestimated in a spreadsheet and not, which isn't a reality factor. And they're spending more time, the right people are spending more time in due diligence. Therefore, it takes a bit longer to get the deal done and over the line.
Absolutely. I've spoken to so many people now. I mean, probably not quite as many as you, but so many people now who have sold their Amazon business. And I really see a pattern in how long these deals take. And ultimately, again, it's obvious in hindsight. Now I've been through it, but you know, the more SKUs you have and the more suppliers you have, the longer it's going to take. Yeah. You know, one of the easiest example, one of the aggregators told me, is they just bought a business which had one manufacturer, one route of shipping, and they had like 4 products from that manufacturer. That due diligence isn't going to take as long as my business, which had 10 products, 4 different manufacturers, and about 25 SKUs selling in 8 different markets. You know, it's going to take longer. And actually, that 65 days, 4 weeks of it was waiting on a certificate coming from the government. So actually, within that, the due diligence by those guys were actually very good. Yeah. But like I said, that time goes differently during due diligence. It felt forever, honestly. Matt, I was very lucky that I had other friends going through it at the same time, and I could call them or I could message them and going, you know, is it taking this long for you? And they would say yes. It was very typical timescales, but it just felt like going through it, you know, you do actually get the money at the end. You feel, it feels weird to say it, but I actually felt I deserved it by the end of it.
You felt you earned it. Yeah. Definitely. Did you have was there anything in the deal where, don't name the essence of what I'm asking you now, but did you have wobbles where you think it's on, it's off, it's on, and something comes up and you're like, oh no, what we're going to do here is 48 hours, the money should... Did you have any of those moments as well?
That's a great question, and I'd completely forgotten this. This is all bringing it back to me. Yeah, I'm smiling now, but that's
I'm giving you CPTSD now, aren't I?
You are. I haven't thought about this since September when it happened. Now, something major, which again, I didn't know anything about this before, but in hindsight, everyone should know the difference between an asset deal and a share deal. So I now know this. Do
you want to explain that to the audience? Break out
Absolutely.
For those who don't know.
So this is particularly relevant from a tax point of view. So the aggregators or anyone buying you, whether it's a private seller or buyer, will ask, do you want an asset deal or a share deal? A share deal is where they're buying the company, so the limited company or the corporation and everything that owns. So it's buying the bank account, it's buying the lease on your rent, it's buying all the contracts with your employees, everything you've done for the last however many years since you've been in existence. Now, as a result of that, most aggregators don't want to do a asset buy. The reason is because they get all the liabilities from those years, and of course you can sign them with waivers and things like that. But it's a pain in the ass, basically. I remember the aggregator by me said they didn't want to do it because they bought a company and they were still waiting for Lloyd's to give access to their bank account a year and a half later. It's just a technical nightmare for them operationally to take all that on. The reason that you well, and then an asset deal is essentially them buying the assets of the company. So they will buy the products, they will buy the trademarks, they will buy essentially the brand. They don't buy the parent company. And it's a lot easier transaction. And they literally say, right, this is what the company makes. We want to buy the ability to make it on your behalf, essentially. So it's a very, clear distinction of, okay, well, why would you ever want to sell the company? It sounds a lot easier because you have to do a huge amount more due diligence on the asset deal or share deal. The share deal, they have to do more due diligence. The reason that you might want to push for a share deal is tax. And ultimately, this is a question that I got asked by so many people is, what multiple did you get? That's the first question everyone asks me. What multiple did you get? And I think a better question is, how much did you put in your pocket? Because it's a bit like gross profit or revenue for vanity, net profit for sanity. Because it doesn't matter how much you sell your company for if you're going to give away so much of it in tax. It matters what you put in your pocket. And that's why in the UK, a lot of people want to sell as a share deal. Because at the moment, and this may change, once you do a share deal, you only pay 10% tax on the first million, and then a bit less on that. Ultimately, you pay a lot less tax by doing a share deal. I highly recommend people Google asset versus share deal. Actually, I can put a link to an article that I think is really good on it for you. But ultimately, it's the biggest difference in what will go in your pocket. And I didn't understand that. So what happened on the first call is, again, I was lucky. My M&A guy said to me, look into this. This is the most important thing you need to know before you go into this. And I spoke to my accountants, and my accountants said, oh, yeah, we can make it work. Do an asset deal, and we can save you tax with this reason, that reason. So on the first call with the aggregator that bought me, I said, we're happy to do an asset deal. And they were really surprised because everyone says, well, we'll go share deal. Anyway, a week after signing the LOI and getting into it, my accountant said, I'm really sorry. We've been looking into it and we've realized that we can't, that tax loophole that, well, whatever it was, isn't relevant anymore. You're going to end up paying an extra $500,000 in tax. It's big numbers. We're not talking about, you're going to pay an extra $500,000 tax, and that's directly coming from you. It's not coming from your investors. It's your tax liability. And I was not, we talk about shock and PTSD. I'm thinking about it now. I just couldn't believe it. And we signed the LOI, and I said to my advisor, what the hell do I do? And he was fuming. He said, fire the accountants to X, Y, Z. He was brilliant in that we went on the call, and the aggregators were phenomenal. And they just said, look, we were surprised you were so easy to go into an asset deal. We weren't expecting this, but we understand how much of a difference it was. And they were phenomenal. And actually what happened is, by that point, they'd done some due diligence and realized it was a fundamentally good business and a growth opportunity.
Because the US market as well, the opportunity there,
Absolutely. And they actually upped their offer. And they upped their offer to counteract virtually all of what I would have lost in a asset deal.
It'd be lovely if you could name them one day, because that shows good class, doesn't it? Like, because the aggregators, I fully support aggregators in the space because of what it's done to the ecosystem. Like, I'll go back and say it again. With these guys coming in, now everyone thinks about exiting. Amazon used to be a lot easier in 2015 because it would be quite easy to get to those heavy 6 figures, 7 figures level, right? It was quite easy for a lot of people to achieve that. It's not so easy now. The startup capital was a lot more, but you couldn't go anywhere. So you relied on product cycles or keep putting out more products. Now you can be a non-engineer or a startup person who works in the tech world and be the everyday person to start up an Amazon business. Of course, you need some skills, right? Which you can develop, because of that opportunity to exit. And that's what I love about what they bring to the table. So I'm very, very supportive, even though a lot of aggregators think I don't like them because there's an article out there that says bloodshed and all this kind of stuff. I got turned over by the writer, but I'm a massive, massive supporter, and something like that shows a lot of class. And if people knew that, they've upped their offer $500,000 to make sure the deal stays on the table. They could have hardballed you on that.
Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't quite a million. I mean,
you know what I mean. It's very close.
They definitely upped their offer, and it was class. Yeah, it was. And as I said, I think having my advisor just say to me, look, be completely honest with them, and just say, look, this is what's happened. I wasn't intending on trying to use it as a negotiation tactic, and like you said, I think I don't want to generalize, because I said I spoke to 16 aggregators, and I certainly had some bullshit and ones that I would say stay well clear of. But of the 3 or 4 that got down to with me, I would recommend any of those actually. And in fact, I know other people who've sold to them. There's ones that actually do themselves and their industry a good service. Yeah.
Cool. So that was resolved. So that was one of the biggest wobbles that you had. Did you have anything towards the last 48 hours where things went sideways and you had to put a band-aid on them?
The last 24 hours were crazy, because they said to me, we never close a deal on a Friday. We never close a deal on a Friday because, if anything goes wrong, then it goes into the weekend. So we do it Monday to Thursday. And we were waiting on this certificate that I was mentioning from
30 days. Yeah.
And on Thursday night, we had a call and said, look, this certificate still isn't here. We don't know how long it's going to be, et cetera, et cetera. Friday morning, I'm a night lark. We were talking just before we came on about our sleep patterns. And I certainly wake up in the evening. And one of the many good things about being an entrepreneur is you can set your own hours. And I kind of come into work a bit later. I take my kids to school. I normally don't get into work till 9:30, 10. Got into work at 10 and hadn't checked my phone for whatever reason. It was on silent. I had so many missed calls from my lawyer, from them. And I was like, shit, something's on fire. My account's gone, the whole way through your process. You're refreshing your account, you're refreshing your reviews, making sure. And my instant reaction is something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And I thought, right, I'll call my lawyer back rather than from the aggregators first. And he went, we're completing today. And I said, we're not completing today. It's a Friday and we haven't got the certificate yet. And this comes back to the funds thing that I was talking about earlier. What had happened is they'd got their chunk of funding a while before, and they were getting pressure on by the people who had it's essentially a loan, and the people who had loaned them the money said, when are you going to use this to buy these companies? And they listed out mine as one of the companies they were going to buy with the money, and we've been waiting 3 weeks at that point, and they were getting pressure to actually buy us from the lender. So you always think you're speaking to the top of the tree, but there's always someone that you don't know, or
everyone has a boss somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And they were desperate to complete that day because it was towards the end of the month. They wanted to do it to close out before month end, so it showed us another acquisition in that month. And we still didn't have the certificate, and I was just said, no, this can't happen. We don't have a certificate. We don't have the I'm still shocked now thinking about it. And he went, no, it's 10 o'clock now. They want to close today. They're going to send me the money now.
10 a.m. You mean?
10 a.m. UK time. And basically it took until 4 o'clock that afternoon of calls for him to confirm he had the money. And we closed that day. And then I had a couple more hours. And then at 6 o'clock, they were wrapping up. We did everything. And I was like, he'd sent the money to my account. And at 6 o'clock on a Friday, I saw these millions in my account. And honestly, that feeling,
relive it for me. What happened? You logged it. Where was you? On your phone, desktop, laptop?
So I was on this exact computer on my desktop. And honestly, the shock, I can't put into words what shock that is. So it happened on a Friday, and my wife is currently pregnant. She's due to give birth next week. And at the time, she was heavily pregnant. So my first thought is, let's go out and party. Let's go out and have drinks on me. Let's go crazy. But I thought, my wife can't drink. Right. And we've got kids at home. I've got a couple of kids at home. And I called her, told her, she was like, do it, go out, go crazy. Called up my friends. And I don't know about you, but my friends, you have to book them 6 months in advance.
They're all busy. They're all in relationships. And
and all of them went, we're really happy for you, but we can't tonight. We've got this, got that. And all of them said, let's do it. Let's let's cancel everything we've got tomorrow night, Saturday night, and we will go out and we will have the night of our lives. And, you know, school friends, these are friends I've known for years, you know, 3 or 4 friends. And that night, I just shaking because I was like, I had no release of how to do it. So I had a bit of champagne, but again, I'm drinking on my own because my wife can't drink. And I went.
Did you shed a tear of joy?
You know, looking back, I didn't then, but at a later date, I did.
Yeah,
I was just in shock. And I tell you one thing, I highly recommend everyone to do once they sell their company. It's a complete wanker thing to do, but you know, I hopefully your audience will understand this when they actually sell. It's one thing to see it on, you know, your computer screen, seeing that many digits in your bank account. Going to a cash point, a very remote cash point where there's no one around. Going to a cash point, saying check your balance, and seeing it on a cash point. I took a photo of that. That is a moment where you go, that's not the company's money, that's my money. And you go, holy shit, that is like that is for me. I mean, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur growing up. That is certainly a milestone where I felt hugely proud. And I had you know, a lot of friends who were very, very you know, supportive of me and said some nice things. So yeah, it is a milestone. And anyone who tells you it's not a big deal is a liar or
it's a life-changing experience. It gives you opportunity to increase your choices and also increase back your time to do whatever you want to do. It's interesting because you know Michelle, and you've known a lot of people that I've had on personally, a lot of the UK people that have exited, and some of them, just like Michelle, was in China, so didn't celebrate. A lot of people didn't get a chance. They had a delayed to the celebration. It's a bit like you couldn't celebrate with your wife. Michelle was with the buyer at China. I was over with her. They're doing the China Magic and a few other bits over there, and Canton Fair and stuff. And then other people, like, they delayed it. I think Ben Leonard delayed it because his wife was pregnant at the time with their first child. And it's quite interesting. It's the relief factor.
Yes.
Then it's like, wow, I've got all these numbers. Some were indifferent to how they reacted. You took a screen grab and stuff. But their next panic was, I don't have a job. Where is my monthly income coming from? Because I don't really want to touch this money. So the next panic, the first world issue, if you like, the greatest problem to have on planet Earth is, holy shit, I need to spend this money on investments so I can create an income from those investments, so I don't affective touching the principal.
Yeah, and I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not there yet. I'm what is it, January? I sold in September. I'm still on a high. I can't lie and say I've been really sensible since. I've not actually spent lots of the money, but I've had some great experiences since, and I haven't got to that stage of worrying about an income yet. I think I've been so, you know, focused on other things. I think
but like you said, you plural, yours was millions, whereas some people exit and take 750 grand or but you've done it in a way that there is a lot more there. Obviously you don't want to be touching that money forever and not reinvested properly. You want to create that, but 5 months of taking, you know, basic living costs and stuff like that is not going to really put a dent.
Yes, and remember, I had investors as well. So 20% of it went to the investors. And actually, you know, some people said to me, do I recommend having investors? Did I felt resentful about, you know, giving that money away? And ultimately, I felt really proud to give a return, because I felt like, a part of me, again, was another badge of honor of, you know, giving a return to investors. And one of them was a school friend. I didn't want to have investments from any friends, but that was a bit different because he'd been helping me out for years. And I actually felt very proud to give a return to my investors. So that was never an issue. And also it's quite nice to share some of that success, you know, go and have a glass of champagne with them and do it from that point of view. But I mean, I've probably done 2 or 3 things then that I really celebrate. That next night I did party hard. I that Friday night that I sold, I spent the night planning the next night as a release. Yeah. And I did the most cheesy night with friends you can imagine. I hired a limousine, right?
Yeah.
With short notice, I didn't realize it was wedding season. So I thought I'd get this really classy limousine, pick them up. And I didn't tell them I was doing this. I said, look, we're going to town. I'll pick you up in my car. Don't drive. We'll drink. I'll get a taxi back. But I thought I'll pick up in a limo as a surprise. So
like you said, the wanky thing, but it had to be done.
Yeah, it's a release. Exactly what you said. It's relief. It's release. It's it's friends. It's like winning the lottery. If you're going to win the lottery, you'd want to go and celebrate with your mates or your family.
Yeah.
And it didn't even cost that much. But what the problem I had is all the limos were booked because it was wedding season. It was the next night, so the only one was available was this massive 10-person stretch Hummer. And some of my friends live down these tiny roads. So what happened is we drove up to them, and I filled it with champagne, and again, it's a complete wanky thing to do, but it was just hilarious because they were happy for me, and it was nights out with your friends. I picked them up and I filmed them, and we couldn't get down all the way down the road, so their neighbors came out. They thought it was like a prom or something like that because it was that sort of car. And we had, we're out the sunroof calling to him, and we got the music blaring and picked them all up, and it was just great fun. So drove into town, all you can eat food, all you can eat all drinks, and I'm over 40 now, so it wasn't exactly like till 5 a.m. as it used to be, but it was just a great night, and I've only done that a couple of things, but then actually life goes fairly back to normal after that. I think you're talking about what next, and the investment. I've been looking into that, and actually it's nice to do it from enjoyment point of view as opposed to shit. I've got like the anxiety of Amazon of like checking your listings. Have I been blacklisted for this or that and things like that? It's actually nice to do it in your own pace and do it from an enjoyment point of view.
Yeah. And so what do you have? Do you have any ideas on designs on a new brand, new concepts, fixed kind of the legacy issues you had in the last business, and what you would do better now in the new brand? Are you starting to cultivate those kind of ideas now?
That's a great question. And actually, I went to Seller Sessions live in October, and highly
never heard of it. Never heard.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, you were hungover. I think you might not remember it. So no, it was good. That happened like in October. What date was it in October? It was
9th of October.
9th. So that was a month after I closed, and I was still in handover periods. There was like a 5-6 week handover period. I still do I'm on call until I'll tell you about deal structure in a second. Actually, happy to go through that. But
of course,
at the point that because Seller Sessions was delayed, originally I was going there with the idea of A, networking, B, finding out more information, just generally find it interesting. But actually at that point I thought, I'll get inspiration for my next business then, just because we're entrepreneurs, and as much as I want to enjoy it for a while, I'll get bored. But I was still in that transition period of handing over. And actually a lot of what happened there is I was catching up with people I haven't seen for a while, post-COVID. I've spoken to people on screens, but it was interesting how many people came up to me and asked me the same sort of questions about the sale. Exactly the same questions everyone had. It's the same questions over and over again. What multiple did you get? Which aggregator gave the best valuation? I've had a shit 12 months. Why did you sell? Then shouldn't I wait until I have a good 12 months? Is there any value in me spending time on my Shopify channel? Will that help the multiple? It was all the same questions I kept getting. And in fact, I've had the same conversations over and over again. Hopefully I've helped all the people that have asked me these questions. But I wasn't in the frame of mind then to think about the next business. I've signed up to the next Seller Sessions, and I hope by then I'm mentally ready to do it, because I definitely do have a strong opinion about what I would do in the next one. One of the talks at the last Seller Sessions, which was very powerful to me, was who was the guy who did about the logistics coming out of China?
Steve Simonson. Yeah.
I mean, that was an incredible presentation, but it hit home for me how challenging getting stock out of China was for the last year. I mean, I said I was hit by Brexit, but I was also hit by stock issues with getting stock out of China and shipping prices going through the roof and all that bullshit I'm sure everyone is feeling. And for me, that actually, it made me glad that I'd sold when I did, because shipping prices went up even more after I sold. Also, it made me think that in a future business, I probably would look into sourcing in the country I'm selling as a potential. That's one of the things I would look into for the next business.
Yeah, cool. And so between now, obviously hitting the new year, what other things, where would you like to think you would invest? Like you're talking about, I like to look at it from the enjoyment point of view. Like, are you looking at stuff? Is it properties? Some people getting into crypto, some people getting into these various different things. Is there anything out there you feel like you would explore that you would enjoy as an investment?
Yeah, another good question, because I've had time to think about this quite a lot. So one of the other things I did post exit is I'm in a group of about 5 of us Amazon sellers who we've been friends for years, and I think a couple of them.
I know more.
Yeah. I think actually Jed introduced you and I. But actually, you and I don't know if you remember this. I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago. I came to one of your masterminds above one of the pubs. This is like early days.
Yeah, that was 2016. Ash Thompson was there.
Yes.
And there was a group of 10 of us around tables.
Yes.
Yeah. And Pete was there. Dan was there from our UK group that we had. Yeah. You introduced through Jed, and it was above a comedy club up in Piccadilly Circus.
Exactly. Yeah. That feels like a lifetime ago and yesterday at the same time.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I and again, I've only done 2 wanky things since selling the company. The second wanky thing,
let's get all the wanky things out onto the table.
Was we hired a castle. So Airbnb rents castles. Right. I didn't know that was a thing. But in the UK, you can Airbnb a castle, and 5 of us, of the 5 of us who have been friends for years, Amazon sellers friends, and of the 5 of us, 4 of us had exited in the last 12 months, which just shows, and we all came together, shared our experiences, and it's fascinating to kind of see how similar our experiences were and what we do differently, and the advice we have, for other people who'd asked us was really interesting. And then of course we talked about investment, and a few of them had previously exited other businesses and had invested. One of the guys is heavily into property. One of the guys has made $1 million in crypto, just right time. Well, that's not giving credit. He's done a lot in crypto on the side. One of them was heavily against crypto, and it was all interesting to hear the kind of.
It very much divides opinion. Like, I've seen that with crypto. I'm not up on those kind of investments. It's never really interested me, but I see that shiny object, right? So people get into, I'm going to do crypto, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm not that way inclined. Like, for me, I invest more in people, but it's something I should learn more about in terms of investment, right? So like what you said, it can really divide people, because people call it a scam, they call it this and this, the market's dead, it's great, you should have sold, and it really does polarize people's opinion.
Yeah, and I really am not the person to talk about with recommendations for there. But interestingly, the guy who was against it would argue that he wasn't actually against it. He was just saying it's a timing thing, and it's like someone saying to me, I had a few people post exit saying that weren't Amazon sellers saying, "Oh, could you teach me how to do Amazon?" And that's like me saying to someone, "Can you teach me crypto?" It's not a 5-minute conversation. You have to throw yourself into it and really learn and go to all the events and do all the courses and learn a lot and get the experience over a year. It's not a dip your toe in type thing. So I will look into it, but I'm fortunate enough that I've got a bit of time to do other things, and I've actually started to do something with another Amazon friend, and it's just, it's nice to have that time to think. I think over the years we've so been focused on the business that even when you're on holiday, I read. You can see all these books behind me, but I take a book to read on holiday, and it makes me think of something else towards my business. So it's actually, this Christmas was the first time I actually properly switched off in years, and it was nice to have that time, and it's nice to kind of look into these things and do it at my own pace. Yeah.
So the answer to the question is that you are looking at the stuff. Is there anything outside of crypto or properties that has caught your eye in terms of trying to invest, or even things like pensions and stuff, which are smaller returns but great in terms of paying into pensions on a tax level?
That's a great question, because I actually think that's the first place people should look. So I'm going to get, so I ended up doing this asset deal, as I said. So I will pay corporation tax on my amount of sales. So that's a big chunk. It's 20% of the final number, which is going to be a big number. Yeah. And you can lower the, I'm fully for paying. I don't think, I mean, this is a political conversation about the taxes.
But there's a difference between evasion and efficiency.
Yes.
Evasion is against, efficiency is obviously within the tax laws in terms of what's printed in the data, whether it's legal or not legal. Whereas some people like to blur those edges quite a bit and gaslight people around it. It's either efficient or it's evasion.
Absolutely.
There isn't a line. There isn't a line.
And a lot of these laws are because the government actually want you to act in a certain way. So, for example, you can take, and this is a great thing that I think everyone should do when they sell their company, or even if they've got a limited company which has got spare cash. So you can lower your, and apologies, your audience, and you might know this already, but you can lower your corporation tax by investing into your pensions. So the first thing I did with the money is put, I think you can take 4 years backlog of pension allowance. So you can put up to 40 grand a year into your pension. So if you take tax free, and it lowers your corporation tax bill. So actually the 4 years backlog, the 160 grand, because my wife was a director on the company and did a bit of work on the company, I can actually do that in her name as well. So that's 100, that's almost about 6 figures we put into our pension, which massively will lower our corporation tax bill. So straight away, we put a huge amount into our pensions. As specific advice, my dad used to be a pensions advisor, and I'm not a financial advisor and all that caveats. But to be specific, we use Vanguard and did a target date retirement fund. And I've got a few books behind me. One of them, Tony Robbins, about Money Master the Game. That's all about investing long term into pensions, and Vanguard for me are very low rates, and that was a no-brainer from my point of view. I'd spent so much time researching it, so as much as possible went into our pensions as just to lower our tax bill, and it's just free money that will come to us at a later date, and that will grow as the stock market grows, and look at it from that point of view. One piece of advice I had from one of my investors, one of the other investors, about investments was he actually sold his company the year before for 15 million, and he was sitting on a lot of cash. I hadn't invested a lot of it, and I was fascinated why. And basically he was still in that same mindset as me, is that he's going to spend some time really researching it and doing, rather than spreading it thinly, just invest it in big chunks.
Why don't you? I'll introduce you to a wealth manager if you want, off call. Speak to a wealth manager, speak to a handful of them, because then it stays on the research. You'll see what's out there in the packages, and just move from one wealth manager to another in terms of speaking to them and picking the best wealth manager.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think, I've had some really, it's enjoyable to have these conversations and learn more about it. And certainly, some people have said they felt the market at the moment is a bit overvalued and there's going to be a crash. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of speculation, but it's, like you said, it's nice problems to have at the moment. But yeah, it's a whole new world.
So before we wrap, before we forget, going back to the project again, the business, the deal structure, you wanted to talk something about the deal structure?
Yeah. So, I said, I kept getting the same questions over and over again. And what I've actually done is put together a website with one of the other guys who sold his company at a similar time to us.
Yeah.
I'll send you the link, Danny. But if people want to Google it, it's called ecommerceaggregators.com.
Yeah.
And what that has in there is basically all of our experiences written on there, and it has the detail of what we would advise you would negotiate, what you wouldn't push on, and things like that. And one of the things that I would highly recommend people to push on is the deal structure and timescales and things like that. So what I managed to negotiate, and again, this is because I had the advisor who was an M&A expert say these are the areas that you should push on. So the number they came up with, we didn't push that a lot, particularly as they gave us that revised number that was higher. What we did negotiate on was the number of days that they had exclusivity. So we originally said, how long do you think it would take to close the deal? And they said 45 days, but we want to do a exclusivity for 90. And we said, well, if you think you can do it 45 days, let's split it and let's do a 60-day agreement. In the end, we signed that and we extended it by 10 days at the end just because of that issue with the certificates. But I think you should push to have the shortest amount of time that's reasonable to close the deal, because it incentivizes them to get it done. And you really did notice a difference as it came towards the exclusivity end as to when things really push forward. Second thing that I would highly recommend people negotiate on is this split of payments. So a lot of aggregators will offer 70% upfront and then the remaining amount in trunks. So the remaining 30% is performance based and it will come 12 or 18 months later, or you can be offered a profit share. We managed to negotiate ours to 80% upfront, and 6 months later we got the remaining, in March, get the remaining 20%. And what's key about that is that's not performance based. So I always felt a bit resentful that the fact that if you give a great handover an amazing business and it starts to suffer and you don't get your performance based pay, which that's happened to some of my friends, I thought I couldn't handle that, because I think, well, I've given you this Ferrari and you're treating it like, a piece of shit. And it's very frustrating. And I've seen friends of mine who've got performance-based deferred payments constantly checking their Amazon listings and chasing the aggregator
to fix the problem.
Do that. And it's like they haven't sold, they're still running the business. Whereas I generally have switched off. I haven't checked my own listings. Well, I was going to say this year, it's only 6th of January, but I haven't checked my listings since before Christmas, which is mental. I used to check them, all the time. So I think having a deferred payment that isn't tied into performance based is something to push on within reason. You have caveats, if it drops, like all your products get taken offline because of some fundamental problem, I think that's fair enough. But as long as it's handed over in a good state, and you should expect it to grow. So I think there's certain things, and we've put it on this website, it's just all the things that I think you should push in negotiation, all the things that I would highly recommend you have in place before even approaching an aggregator. And then there's also a lot of stuff that I wasted time putting together that you just didn't need. The certain financials and certain stuff like that you just don't need to go into. They've got such a formulaic way of valuing their business. There's certain things you need, and there's a lot of stuff that you can just say, well, I'll focus on growing the business rather than preparing it for sale, because I don't need to spend time on that.
Yeah. Cool. What is the best way people can reach you? Obviously the website, but what's an email address people can reach one?
I think if you come through ecommerceaggregators.com, there's actually you fill it in through there, and what it will do is it actually send me me and Martin an email alert, and I can reply to any questions on that directly. Cool. The reason we do it that way is Martin, I should say, is actually a very experienced Amazon seller as well, and we can kind of answer questions between us. Yeah, he had a business that was 100%, well, not 100%, a big percentage of it was US sales, and he was in a different niche to me as well. So it's quite helpful to have both of us kind of
different perspectives and balances from different experiences. Yeah,
exactly. So I've had a lot of people that have come up to me, and I've answered 80% of their questions, but then said, actually, have a chat with my friend Martin, because it's more relevant, those questions to him, and vice versa. So I mean, he was one of the guys that came to the castle and had a great time, but he's a very successful entrepreneur, and between the two of us, you can contact us through the website, and hopefully we can add a lot of value. I certainly look back at that experience and go, I got 90% of it right, and was very lucky to have that advisor. But there's a few things that I would have done slightly differently that we've put all on there.
Excellent. Guys, thank you for joining us today. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I'll be back here.